For the last few years, I've been promoting what I call the judgment-based approach to entrepreneurship, which articulates entrepreneurship as taking control of resources, productive assets, and combining them in different ways, deploying them under conditions of uncertainty in an attempt to earn profits and to avoid losses. So by its very nature, the way I see it, entrepreneurship is not just about coming up with ideas. It's not just about discovering opportunities in the environment. It's about action. It's about taking action in the world, putting assets at risk in order to try to achieve some goal. We know a lot about how entrepreneurs think. We know about how entrepreneurs plan. We know a little bit about how they try to anticipate future events, but we don't know as much about what determines successful outcomes from unsuccessful ones. And we have a lot of models of formal decision-making, we have scenario planning and so forth, but ultimately, what is it about the entrepreneur as a person or the entrepreneurial team or the context that makes some people more successful than others at dealing with this fundamental, radical, Knightian uncertainty that surrounds us? We have insights from other disciplines, organization and strategy and finance and so forth, that help us to understand some of the factors that are most often associated with successful entrepreneurial action. How does this tie into cognition and ways that we think about uncertainty? Those are issues that we're just beginning to understand and for which we need a lot more research effort. As far as future research directions, there are several different ways to go. Some people are interested in kind of understanding what successful entrepreneurial judgment really is from a cognitive point of view, from a behavioral point of view. I think that's a potentially fruitful line of research. But remember, at the end of the day, entrepreneurial judgment is a kind of decision-making about the future that is to some extent intuitive and tacit and latent. And by definition, it's a kind of decision-making that cannot be modeled as a set of formal procedures or formal decision rules. So I think there are some limits in our use of science to understand the cognitive, essence of entrepreneurial judgment. So another strand is to look at more at the macro level, look at resources, look at firm characteristics, look at markets and institutions, and say under what circumstances can we expect that people who have better entrepreneurial judgment, who are more successful at anticipating the uncertain future, will thrive and will succeed and will be able to accumulate more resources. So a lot of it is about sort of how judgment is manifest in the market, or how different kinds of market systems respond to judgment. That's a different line of research from trying to understand, what judgment is and how do we make it better, how do we teach it, and so forth. There's a lot of interest nowadays in things like artificial intelligence and machine learning. Can machines engage in strategic thinking? Can machines make entrepreneurial decisions? Really, what I'm interested in is more kind of the boundaries of what things we can task to machines or algorithms and what things we have to retain for ourselves. And, in my conceptualization of entrepreneurship is about kind of the residual or final decision authority. It's not about day-to-day decisions, which can be delegated from an entrepreneur to a manager or an assistant or a consultant or a machine or a computer, right? So it's sort of figuring out, so what are the decisions that only entrepreneurs who own and control and have residual decision authority about resources, what are the decisions that only they can make, right? So I can task some, I can give some jobs to my subordinate, or I can hire a consultant, but ultimately I, as the owner of these resources, have to make the final decisions about, well, whether to take the consultant's advice, which consultant to hire, and which consultant not to hire, and so forth. It's this kind of residual decision authority that is really tied up with notions of ownership and entrepreneurship. I have another project looking at the characteristics of good owners, and under what circumstances does ownership, do ownership claims flow to those with the highest levels of what we call ownership competence. So I think links between entrepreneurship and ownership and governance, that's a very fruitful research direction, which is just sort of beginning to be understood.